In this presentation, you will learn about patriarchy. The concept of patriarchy is an essential tool in analysis of gender relations. To understand gender relations, it becomes imperative to understand the concept of patriarchy. Gender relations are skewed because of the existence of patriarchy. A patriarchal society is one in which power is vested in the patriarchs. In its original form, patriarchy meant the rule of the father or patriarch, and it was used to describe a particular type of family dominated by a man. The patriarch's large household, which included women, children, slaves, and domestic servants. Patriarchy is an ideological and a social construct that places men above women. The concept of patriarchy is used more generally to refer to male domination, to the power relationships by which male dominate women, and to categorize a system whereby women are kept subordinate to men in a number of ways. Sylvia Wolby, in her book Theorizing Patriarchy, describes patriarchy as a system of social structures and practices in which men dominate, oppress, and exploit women. She argues that understanding patriarchy as a system will help us to reject biological determinism, the belief that men and women are biologically different because of their bodies and therefore must be placed in different positions, and every woman is a subordinate one. Patriarchy creates a hierarchy of social positions based on the gender of the individuals, with the man positioned higher than the woman. The result is unequal power relations where men control the production, reproduction, and sexuality of women. Family, kinship, network, state, religion, and media perpetuate the culture of patriarchy by promoting male domination and women's subordination. The patriarchy creates double standards in various spheres of life for men and women. Conceptually, patriarchy is a tool to gain a better understanding of social reality. Juliet Mitchell, a feminist psychologist, uses the word patriarchy to refer to kingship systems in which men exchange women and to the symbolic power that fathers exercise within their systems. This power, she says, is responsible for the inferiorized psychology of women. Hartman has defined patriarchy as a set of social relations between men which have a material base and which, though hierarchical, establish or create interdependence and solidarity among men that enable them to dominate women. The analysis of the major institutions of society like family, religion, law, politics, education, economic institutions, media, and knowledge systems make it quite evident that they are all patriarchal in nature and are the pillars of a patriarchal structure. This well-knit and deep-rooted system makes patriarchy seem invincible. It also makes it seem natural. In patriarchal societies, various forms of violence may be used to control and subjugate women, and this type of violence might even be considered legitimate. For feminists, violence against women is not just pervasive, it is systemic in patriarchal societies. The term patriarchy is not only a descriptive term but also explains how specific societies construct male authority and power, and hence it can be looked up as an analytical category. The transformation of patriarchy from a descriptive to an analytical category took place in 1970s and gave birth to a rousing feminist political and intellectual culture in diverse global contexts. Many feminist theories revolve around the concept of patriarchy. It seeks to explain the stratification of power and privilege by gender that can be observed by many objective measures. A patriarchy from the ancient Greek patriarchs was a society where power was held by and passed down through the elder males. By patriarchal society, historians and sociologists mean one in which males hold positions of authority and have more privileges: head of the family, leader of social groups, head of government, head of business. As a concept, patriarchy is used to describe factors contributing to authority and power in a social system where men are automatically privileged over women, and women can only lay claim to material, sexual, and intellectual resources by fighting for them. Over the past few decades, patriarchy has been described and critiqued not only for its negative aspects, but also positive effects. Thus, the patriarchal system offers comforting self-definitions and norms, regardless of how limiting or limited they are, and even rewards those who learn to accept their roles as mothers and wives. As a result, women are actively encouraged to fulfill their social roles by virtue of being praised and accorded social sanction. The concept of patriarchy goes beyond the subordination of women. A patriarchal system does not necessarily make all men powerful. There is hierarchy among men in patriarchal systems. The elder men in traditional patriarchal societies ruled over the younger generations of men. Modern patriarchy promotes power and privilege to some men as a result of their position or authority, and this hierarchy of power and privilege is accepted. Younger men must defer to older men in a patriarchal system until it is their turn to exercise power. The patriarchal system discriminates against, excludes, and denies humanity to many different categories of people, including the poor, underprivileged, Dalits, and people of lower castes in India, as well as transgender and gay men. Although certain classes and sorts of men are as much the targets of patriarchal authority as women, the fact remains that men can and do lay claim to resources and power far more easily than the women in their families and communities. Normally, women's productive or labor power, women's reproduction, their sexuality and mobility, and property and other economic resources are areas of women's lives that can be said to be under patriarchal control. Literally, patriarchy means the rule of the male head of a social unit. In a social unit, the patriarch has legitimate authority over other, especially younger, women, men, and children. In the early 20th century, feminist writers, however, used the term to describe the social system of male dominance over women. The concept of patriarchy has been central to gender studies, contributing to a number of theories that seek to explain the basis of women's subordination to men. There are three important feminist theories in which patriarchy is central: radical feminist, Marxist feminist, and dual system theory. The patriarchy is seen by some radical feminists as the primary social division in society. Other radical feminist accounts for patriarchy emphasize the control men have over women's bodies. In a further grouping of feminist analysis, often labeled as Marxist feminism, patriarchy is presented as an arising from capitalism, as it requires and benefits from the unpaid labor of women at home. Under a dual system theory, capitalism and patriarchy are understood as mutually accommodating, interdependent systems of oppression whereby both benefit from women's subordination. Currently, it is widely acknowledged that patriarchy should be abandoned as an explanatory concept or theory and should only be used as an adjective to describe relationships and institutions where men dominate women. Rather than attempting to reformative patriarchy as an explanatory concept, various writers have adopted an alternative approach to gender theorizing, one which encourages a focus on the specifics of social relations rather than on homogeneous social systems. The best way to describe male control of women is patriarchal dominance. There are oppressive aspects to patriarchy, but it also involves a set of mutual obligations and is rarely perceived as oppressive. It is for this reason that it is difficult to recognize and fight against patriarchal dominance. There are several feminist scholars who conceptualize and analyze patriarchy in different ways. Several of them challenge patriarchy. Feminists contend that patriarchy is a man-made system determined by socio-economic and political forces. Patriarchy is viewed by feminists as an instrument to serve the interests of men. According to them, patriarchal ideology manifests itself in knowledge, ideology, values, and practices prevalent in society. Thank you for watching the presentation.